Hello everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers weekly listen and eMarketer podcast. This is the Friday show that is convinced that coffee baristas are just making up drink names. They just shout out anything.
Such as?
Tall, non-fat, mocha choca, latte, yaya, lady marmalade.
Yeah, that's a real drink you could order.
With soy film.
Soy film?
With soy foam.
Yeah, I like film better.
Just a film of soy.
Just coming up
Delicious.
with all kinds of stuff. Is anyone checking that these are real? Exactly. I'm onto something.
Got bigger fish to fry over here.
I need a life is what you're saying. And it's true. It's a fair point. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, is ad fatigue getting worse?
I mean, I think, consumers too understand, it's been historically true that there's just a trade-off when you're consuming media. You're going to see ads that goes back to like print newspapers.
Will generative AI revolutionize the in-car experience?
I don't know if this is going to be quite the revolution that's being promised, which I think is typical of anything related to smarter cars these days.
What is the most interesting way that out-of-home advertising is evolving?
There's all these other gadgets that have emerged for out-of-home, but like the format that has driven home the money in the past is still the one that's driving the money home right now.
Will niche video streaming services gain share? And how much does the American dream cost? Who do we have on today's episode? 3 people. Let's meet them. We start with our Vice President of Everything Briefings. She is based in New Jersey. It's Stephanie Taglianetti.
Cheers, mate.
Hello there. We're also joined by our Director of Reports Editing. He is now based in Maryland. We call him Rahul Chadha.
Hey, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Hello, fella. And we finally have our Senior Analyst who covers everything digital advertising and media. He's based just north of New York City. It's Ross Benes.
Hey, Marcus.
Hey, fella. So, we've got a story, we've got a debate, we end with some random trivia. Let's get to it. We start, of course, with the story of the week. Is ad fatigue getting worse? This is a question from Tom Ryan of Retail Wire. He cites a new survey from ad indexing company ADID, showing ad fatigue is influencing consumer behavior, with 6 out of 10 US adults saying they are less likely to buy products or use services from companies that show the same ads repeatedly. So 6 in 10 folks saying that. Half of people, 5 in 10, had decided not to purchase a product from a brand when they see the ads too often. So gang, this is a question that comes up periodically, but we're revisiting it again. Is ad fatigue getting worse?
Well, it's getting worse for people who spend all their time on phones because they're not blocking ads at the same rate as people are spending their time on computer screens.
Okay.
I just feel like when you look at the environment that people are living in holistically, consumers are just faced with ads on pretty much every front. Every retailer is adding retail media. There's the burgeoning commerce media networks on travel and financial channels. It's like you can't even turn on a new smart TV without getting hit with a bunch of ads that are incorporated into the operating system these days. And even like on streaming services, I think and Ross can speak to this too, consumers on ad tiers are more lucrative for the services than subscribers. So it's like they have an incentive to push ads on you there. Google search results are inundated with sponsored links. I mean, it just goes on and on. I don't know how you could say it's getting better in terms of ad fatigue.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily getting worse just because I don't have comparative data in terms of sentiments now versus 5 years ago. But I do know that general annoyance just extends to advertising more broadly. My team, I think a week ago, just wrote a piece about how consumers are becoming fatigued with brand emails and text marketing. There was a survey they covered where 40% of US consumers said they felt overwhelmed by marketing content and then were unsubscribing from brand emails and texts at least once a week, which was higher than the global average of 25% of people who said they were doing the same. But again, I don't know if it's getting worse per se. It's definitely not getting better.
There's some other numbers on that as well. Because the question is what's the worst that can happen? It's customers can break up with you.
Yeah,
There's some
exactly.
numbers here. 61% of Americans unsubscribed from 3 or more retail brands in the past 3 months due to too many marketing messages. And this was from Optimove, who had this data. I think people are less tolerant with ads because they can second screen, because our attention spans are becoming shorter and shorter, and people before used to have a bit more patience, a bit more tolerance. But now I think because if an ad does come on your laptop whilst you're streaming something, you can pull out your phone, or you can, whilst it comes up on whatever device, you can pivot to another one and then to another one. And even now with the advent of short video, like if there's a 3 hours worth of ads, you can just turn your phone on and watch a short video or watch a TikTok or watch a whatever it is. So I do think people are becoming less tolerant, more frustrated, and more expectant with what they are hoping to see from advertisers.
I think too, like the increased prevalence of ads on all these different media channels, however you want to describe them, trains people, especially in the attention economy, to ignore them.
Yes.
It's like my eye naturally just unconsciously glosses over ads if I'm scrolling through the New York Times app, or if I'm, a pop-up, obscures the screen for a minute on a desktop. I'm like just instinctively headed for like the X in the upper right corner, and that's about as much attention as I pay to an ad anymore.
Totally. We're trained to be able to press skip or X, or even on TikTok to just hover and say, I'm not interested. This is excessive when you're seeing stuff.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why an ad price will be higher when there's fewer ads. It's like if you're looking at TV or streaming, if you're running 10 minutes of ads per hour, the amount you're going to charge per unit is going to be much less than if you're only having a minute per hour, because that minute per hour is harder to ignore when there's just less of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are certain channels that are more irritating than others as well. This is also from the Optimove survey. The channels that are most irritating when it comes to being bombarded by marketing messages, text messages, and email were joint first, with nearly 4 in 10 people saying it was the most irritating, being inundated with that flavor of ad, assuming because they're the most personal and they feel the most invasive because those are very personal spaces where ads are popping up.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, you may be getting an email from me to sign up for a webinar next week, though.
Just ignore it.
I think, consumers too understand. I mean, it's been historically true that there's just a trade-off when you're consuming media. You're going to see ads that goes back to like print newspapers and
especially free media.
Yeah, maybe before that, but marketing messages, creating a distinction between them and like paid advertising. Yeah, people definitely have a lower tolerance for those things in their email and text streams. If you're, over messaging people, yeah, it's a step too far for sure. They're less tolerant, but I think people are kind of hard to make apples to apples comparison, like less put off by ads, on Hulu or something. It's just kind of cost of watching streaming services or whatever. But that doesn't mean they don't get annoyed by like problems with ad frequency. Like, I don't know what Sky Rizzy is, but I feel like it's for like some like skin disorder that I don't have. And I'm like, I have no idea, but I've seen the ad for that thing like a million times.
Yeah, but that's, I think, what's interesting. That was one of the more interesting points, is like that perceived spam of ads influences your perception of that brand, right? You're like, oh my God, this brand is so annoying. I see this ad, whatever that is, for this skin condition.
Totally. I remember the word Sky Rizzy. I just have no idea what it does. Like, I don't know, maybe that's considered success from their perspective.
So, you touched on something interesting, which is there are different types of ways to be annoyed with ads and suffer from ad fatigue. One is the length of ads. So do you have to sit through, what used to be however many minutes per hour when you're watching the TV, and whether, now you have to watch a certain number of minutes worth of ads per however long you've been watching your streaming service. You've got the number of ads that are being packed into a space kind of back to back. But you also have the frequency of ads, of the same ads reappearing. And as I mentioned, there was 6 in 10 people who said they're less likely to buy from someone when they keep getting shown the same ad. There are certain demographics more likely to express frustration with repetitive ads: adults under the age of 55, men, and parents of kids younger than 18 as well. I thought an interesting question was posed from the CEO of Ad ID, who did this survey, Nader Bradbury, was saying the next step is knowing how many times it is too many. And Ross, as someone who pays attention to video streaming, it doesn't seem like CTV World has any idea of how many is too many. And if they do, it doesn't seem like they're abiding by that rule.
Well, yeah, I would say with the second thing you said, even if they do figure it out, they're not really abiding by it. Even if they're trying to, there's always some sort of technical mishap that leads you to see the same Geico ad 15 times over the course of a movie on a free streaming service.
All right, folks, that's where we'll leave the story of the week for today. Let's move now to our debate of the week. Today's segment, Make the Case. Where our panel, Rahul, Ross and Stephanie, give the for and against arguments featuring the following questions. From 3 news stories, 2 folks face off per question, and the following takes don't reflect the analyst's personal views. Their job is to just present the best case regardless and offer objective analysis. So keep your real feelings to yourself. Question 1. Will generative AI revolutionize the in-car experience? GenAI is coming for your car, writes Ian Freedom Axios, explaining that Qualcomm just announced it is bringing its next-gen Orion processor to its in-car computer systems for both entertainment and automated driving. The article notes that this will add a tremendous amount of computing power inside the car, helping with everything from finding the nearest cheap gas to pointing out landmarks to understanding a dashboard warning light. The new car chips will be sampling next year, hitting the road after that. Okay, nothing on that pun. Fair enough. Move on. Will generative AI revolutionize the in-car experience? Rahul versus Stephanie. Rahul is arguing that Gen AI will revolutionize the in-car experience. 60 seconds on the clock. Thank you, V, who edits the show. Make the case.
Yeah, I mean, this is the closest thing to a captive audience that an AI-powered assistant can have. If you get bad results from Siri on your iPhone, you can always, actually interface with the screen, Google something, type something out on your keyboard. That's a lot harder in a car when you're hopefully using your hands to, steer it and stuff like that. And I think auto manufacturers are motivated to get AI assistants right in their infotainment systems because they can gather valuable data on users to, you guessed it, sell them ads at the end of the day or information that helps sell ads. But I do think it's likely to take OEMs a fair bit of time to overcome the design issues and technological limitations that they face before AI assistants in cars will be commonplace.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie is arguing Gen AI won't revolutionize the in-car experience. Make the case.
Before I start, Victoria, can you please insert cricket sounds after Marcus's pun earlier?
No need. People listening got it.
Great.
Forget you guys.
All right, I'm ready. You do it all the time. So I don't know if this is going to be quite the revolution that's being promised, which I think is typical of anything related to smarter cars these days, right? Like Elon Musk overblowing when driverless cars are going to be ready for the road. These tech enhancements seem to be overhyped, like well before they're ready to make that huge impact. So I'm imagining this to be more of like a slow burn. The idea is great. And then you think about all the back end stuff that has to happen and it gets longer and longer and longer before it becomes a reality. So you need the chips to be ready, which Qualcomm said will be maybe in 2025 sometime. Then you need the cars with the chips to hit the road. So that'll come later. Then you need people to buy the cars that have the chips. And that'll take some time. Then you need people to be Gen AI users, which is definitely happening. I think there's going to be 116 million by 2025 from our estimates. But anyway, that's just to say that I don't think what Qualcomm is talking about releasing is all that different from the ways that people are using voice assistants for search right now. So it seems like it'll make an experience that many people are already doing a little bit better, maybe in 5 years' time or more.
In 5 years? Oh, wow. Okay. I think in 5 years, it could be quite different. I think it's the scientist and futurist Roy Amara, his quote of people tend to overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term. And I think that the article was noting some potentially impactful new Gen AI features. I think better rerouting capabilities, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you can get kind of like real-time construction where they put like codes out and do work on roads during the night, helping drivers find multiple things at the same stop. So if you want to stop for gas, you also want to stop for coffee, can you combine those two things into one? Purchasing tickets to a museum after confirming its hours. So using your voice to, as you're driving along, I'm heading somewhere, can you also grab me tickets to the thing? And there was one concept video showing a car's AI assistant telling the driver, there's no parking nearby, unload here and I'll park the car. I mean, again, like that much further down the road, but I do think it could change the way that quite significantly how we interact with different services whilst on the road.
It's a matter of when for me, right? Like when is this going to be our reality?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe people will become more used to doing things like that now that Apple Intelligence is kind of almost here. I mean, the Siri portion of it, the more advanced portion of it will be out in next March, but maybe that gets people more used to asking more of their devices or of generative AI across multiple parts of their life. Let's move to round two. Question two, I should say. The most interesting way that out-of-home advertising is evolving is this topic, Ross versus Stephanie. Next year, out-of-home advertising will be the only traditional media channel still growing, notching up 4% compared to the declines across radio, print, and TV that we're expecting. That said, it's the digital part of out-of-home that is driving it. Traditional's out-of-home share, 2/3 of the total, will fall by a point. Digital will be going up. Out-of-home advertising is evolving, though, as Zach Stamborn notes. Some, like Bed Bath and Toys R Us, are betting the brick and mortar locations will serve as 3D billboards, driving awareness. Others are reimagining the scale of out-of-home with billboard-sized buildings like Las Vegas's The Sphere, the city's largest billboard. That's also a concert venue. The question is, what is the most interesting way that out-of-home advertising is evolving? Ross is making his case first. The most interesting way that out-of-home advertising is evolving to you, Ross, is what?
Through all the change, the tried and true format of billboards is still receiving most of the revenue. So out-of-home, it looks much different now than it did 10 years ago. It's a lot more digital. There's more programmatic buying and so on and so forth. But billboards still receive about 3/4 of total out-of-home revenues, which is actually slightly higher than their pre-pandemic share. So billboards, there's all these other gadgets that have emerged for out-of-home, but like the format that has driven home the money in the past is still the one that's driving the money home right now.
And this is traditional static paper and digital, or one or the other?
Well, everything. So, I mean, billboards are digital. They're also static. If you go to the OAAA figures and you look at the share of total out-of-home revenue by format, billboards is still the largest category. Billboards have certainly evolved as well, but they just showed like that's where the attention is. Roadside billboards still receive a lot more attention than all the street furniture or stuff that people have put inside of their offices.
Yeah.
Ross, I'm curious too, like is kind of the black box nature of programmatic mean that, people might just be making programmatic ad buys and not aware that their ads are ending up on billboards?
No, I don't think that's happening as much. I mean, programmatic out-of-home is very tiny. Most out-of-home is still not bought that way. So when money's going to billboards, it's usually intentionally purchased that way. It's just out of all the out-of-home formats, those are the ones that are still receiving the most attention. Like roadside traffic hasn't declined, even though a lot of other behaviors have changed since COVID.
Mm-hmm. And also the digital ones are expensive. So
yeah, they make sense in Times Square. They don't make sense in the rural Midwest. It's, hundreds of thousands of dollars to build and maintain some of those screens.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense too.
You need to have a lot of people walking by them.
Yeah, right. Stephanie, to you, the most interesting way that out-of-home advertising is evolving is what?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is that it's going increasingly digital and seems to be getting more interactive. This is a good thing. I think Sarah Lebo just posted some data about digital out-of-home ads drive action from almost 80% of the people who see them. And what that means is 76 or more % of digital out-of-home viewers took an action after seeing the ad, such as watching a video from the brand, visiting a restaurant, purchasing in store, having a word-of-mouth conversation about the brand, or visiting the store. And then I mentioned these more interactive examples that are paying off for brands. For example, the NBA had a digital out-of-home campaign for its 75th anniversary playoff that had fan tweets sort of interacted with the ad, and it increased tune-in intentions by 25% and boosted brand awareness by 7%, according to it. And then there was this example from CVS, which was the hashtag Beauty Unaltered campaign. So this was in Times Square, New York City. People could upload an unedited selfie with the hashtag Beauty Unaltered, and then they were displayed on digital billboards every 10 seconds, and that generated 3.6 billion impressions for CVS.
Was the NBA example the digital floor, the video floor?
It was a dynamic ad that had game countdowns and scores and then fan tweets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was one example, the Fast Company article from Nate Berg, pointing to German company ASB Glass Floor, who have a new product called the Video Floor, which was featured at the NBA All-Star game earlier this year. And the floor, basically, it becomes a billboard. So it was an entire basketball court made out of tempered safety glass, and it had 27 million pixel LED display, which can display graphics, video replays, player tracking animations, and you guessed it, ads. And so they kind of flicked between Ruffles and Starry and AT&T, and the floor was a big screen.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is really awesome, where it feels like you're engaging with it directly.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. And yeah, digital is driving things. As I said, 2/3 of out of home is still traditional. That's going to fall by a point next year, but digital out of home, the other third, is growing by 12 points, which is really impressive, giving total out of home a 4% growth rate for next year. All right, folks, question 3, Ross versus Rahul. Will niche video streaming services gain share? QSR, Chick-fil-A, is reportedly launching its own streaming platform, writes Rich Johnson of The Hill. Peter White of Deadline reports that the chain is working with several producers to create family-friendly, particularly unscripted shows to stream on its own channel, and may also license and acquire existing shows. The Deadline article notes that Chick-fil-A is the latest company outside of the entertainment world to move into making its own originals, joining ride-hailing service Lyft, which produced a game show, and home-sharing giant Airbnb, which produced the MTV documentary Gay Chorus Deep South. You also have horror-focused services like Shudder, Anime Hub, Crunchyroll, Victory Plus, launched by NHL team the Dallas Stars, etc., etc. Question is, will niche video streaming services gain share? Ross is arguing that it will. Make the case.
Many of the bigger streaming services are starting to tap out as far as how big their audiences can get, while there's more room for many of these niche streaming services to grow. And the niche services tend to be cheaper, so they're less prone to cancellation, because they're also already appealing to super fans. They have small audiences, but those who subscribe tend to be pretty loyal. So I think people's niche interests are going to stick around and keep those services successful, while the huge services start to consolidate to gain profitability.
Rahul, niche streaming services won't gain share. Make the case.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult for ad-supported niche services to get the scale that would make them appealing to ad buyers. You know, it's a weirdly self-fulfilling prophecy if you're a niche, I think, from that perspective. And the ones that are dependent on subscription fees are competing with the ever-growing number of other streamers. I do think at some point every household hits a limit in terms of the video services they're willing to pay for. I think the other challenge, honestly, niche streamers are facing is they're not just competing with streaming services. You know, they have to battle things like social media and content creators who can maybe offer similar niche content for free or comparatively low cost. But I actually do have a question for Ross about, you know, the concept of niche services. He wrote recently about bundling, how bundling is kind of like becoming something that's, you know, sort of reproducing the traditional cable package, but among streaming services. And I was curious what his thoughts were about niche streamers and bundling. Do you think there's like some kind of prospect for them from that perspective?
Some of them already do. You know, Shudder is with AMC Plus. They're owned by the same people. So I think you'll see some bundling if there's shared ownership. But it makes sense why like a Peacock user and a Netflix user may be the same type of person, but Big Ten Plus and anime services might not go together. So, you know, I don't think most of these, it'll go where there's shared ownership or shared interest, but some of these niche services are, you know, completely different than another niche service, and it would just be like a weird format to throw them together.
So we probably should have started with this, but Ross, what does niche mean? Because like you've got Pluto
that's in the
TV,
eye of beholder, right?
Right. Like you've got small players like Pluto TV, and they're smaller than, you know, Peacock or Max or Roku Channel, Tubi or whatever, but they're bigger than someone like a Shudder. So I mean, what would you say the definition is there?
Well, I don't think niche applies to the audience size necessarily. Pluto TV has sports and crime and drama and comedy. You know, there's kind of everything, all types of programming are on there. A niche service tends to focus on one type of programming, like only anime is on Crunchyroll, only horror is on Shudder. Gotham Sports only has New York regional sports networks. So it's like all one thing going hard on that one thing. So that's what makes them different than, you know, having few subscribers.
There was some data on this from Antenna, Over the last 2 years, niche streaming services have gained ground. I couldn't see the definition in this, but they say the share of folks who subscribe to a paid-for specialty service, as it was called.
Yeah, specialty might be a better word for it.
Okay. Yeah, they went from 19% to 31% from Q2 of 2022 to 2024. Most of those, 66%, subscribed to just one specialty service, but 20% were signed up to two, and 15% have three or more. The Chick-fil-A thing I think is interesting because it's going to be interesting to see what kind of content they have on there. One idea is making a show about yourself, which sounds like it wouldn't work, but there was in the article from Mr. Johnson of the Hill, he was pointing out that in 1999, British documentary series Boiling Point followed that then unknown chef Gordon Ramsay as he opened his first restaurant in London and shared with the world his explosive temper in the kitchen. So I don't know, maybe it has a positive effect for the brand if you show kind of the inner workings of your company. So maybe that's one piece of content that they create. But for now, it seems like they're going the unscripted, family-friendly route. All right, folks, that's all we've got time for the debate of the week. We move now to the final segment of today's show. It's dinner party data. This is the part where we tell you about the most interesting thing we've learned this week. Let's kick things off with Ross.
So, depending on when you listen to this, the New York Yankees have already eliminated from the World Series.
Probably.
And they're in one of their longest World Series droughts ever. So I just kind of looked up how often do the Yankees usually win the World Series. So they launched as a franchise in 1903 as the Highlanders. They became the Yankees in 1913. They went 20 years after their founding before their first World Series in 1923. But basically, over their 121 years, they have won a World Series on average every 4.5 years. Right now, it's been 15 years and counting since they last won the World Series in 2009. So they basically are tied for one of the longest streaks they've ever had. The longest one they've had since their opening from 1903 to 1923 is they went 18 seasons from 1978 to 1996. And that's when they started their super team with Jeter and all those folks. So just 3 seasons short of tying the all-time drought and 5 seasons short of tying their biggest drought since their founding. So the Yankees don't usually go this long between World Series wins.
It's frightening how many they've won. I knew that they had the most, but when I looked up that they had 27 and that second place Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals, had 11, that's remarkable. They have 3 times more nearly than second place.
You know, a lot of it, though, it's like if you look at the 30s to the 50s, there's like probably more than 15 of those 27 in that period. Like they won every year in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. That's how I feel about the Celtics. They just won a bunch when there were like 12 teams in the league. Do they really count? No. All right, folks. Stephanie.
So I really like looking up niche holidays for my fun facts of the week.
You do.
I bet you didn't know that this Saturday is National Deviled Eggs Day.
Okay.
I have some facts about both this very popular party snack and eggs generally. What a perfect snack, by the way, if you're going to a Halloween party to bring a little deviled egg treat. Come on, Marcus, focus your eyes forward.
Sorry, yeah, I'm paying attention. I didn't see this coming.
I know, it keeps it interesting. So the deviled egg originated in ancient Rome, and the term deviled is used all the way back since the 18th century. It used as most often to describe spicy foods. And here's an interesting description: including eggs prepared with mustard, peppered, or other ingredients stuffed in the yolk cavity. Have you ever heard this in a recipe, the yolk cavity? Sounds quite disgusting to me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
You're so welcome. The average hen lays 300 to 325 eggs per year, and it takes a chicken 24 to 26 hours to produce a single egg. Yeah. I always thought it would be more than that because I've had visions of, owning property in the Catskills and having a chicken coop, but 1 egg per day is what you get from a single chicken.
Not a great return.
Right. That's what I thought. So there you go. Some egg facts for you.
Yeah. I thought we were going to have to cut most of that when you started, but we can leave something. I'll let Victoria decide. Rahul, how about you?
Yeah, I stumbled across what I thought was an interesting piece of data earlier in October. The pest control company Orkin named Chicago the rattiest city in America.
Oh.
So the Windy City beat out number 2 LA and number 3 New York City for the dubious honor. I was surprised at NYC's low ranking. This list was compiled by tracking new residential rodent treatments that Orkin fielded in 50 cities. Greensboro, South Carolina was the least rattiest city by Orkin's measure. And I don't know if people in New York City know this too, but Mayor Eric Adams named the city's first rat czar back in April of last year. Her official title is the Director of Rodent Mitigation, and she's pulling down a cool $155K a year to try to eliminate rats in the city.
Wow.
It's a very stable occupation.
I would have taken that job. I think I have a solution. I think it's pretty difficult to, it's pretty like complex solution to it. So, not everyone's going to be able to comprehend what I'm about to suggest. But I think maybe just if you got rid of all the litter, that might help. There's trash everywhere in New York. That might be why there are so many rats. Just a thought.
Aren't they trying to
Yeah, they're trying to use trash cans. It's like really innovative.
Wow, trying to use trash cans for trash. Can you believe it? I've been to cities where there are not even like trash cans publicly available, and you're expected to walk around with your own little personal trash bag and dispose.
Oh yeah,
of it.
that was the chore I experienced in Japan. It's like there are no public trash cans there. You just have to like hike around with orange peels in your pockets and stuff.
About that Orkin data, so that's based on where they're treating. I would throw this out there. Chicago may be treating the rats more than New York City. I think New York City just doesn't. They just let the rats live. Like no one's killing them. There's more rats.
I feel like
nothing's happening about the rats.
There's more rats and no action.
There's a detente. There's like a truce declared between New Yorkers and the rats. Each lets the other just live.
Yeah, we've just accepted this is a shared city of 2 species.
Don't make Stephanie the rat czar.
I think one of the things that was kind of horrific about the woman's background, I think her name is Kathleen Karate, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is that she has a background in education. She was a school teacher, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to draw from that, like her experiences in education, and they found her the best person to exterminate rats in the city. I don't know.
I mean, she's as good as anyone. Just clean
Marcus,
up the trash.
I think you have a shot.
Yeah. Honestly, next time you're in New York, look around. There is no moment. I noticed this recently, which is I'm surprised I didn't notice it in all the years I lived there. But there's no point when you're in New York that you can't see litter on the floor. At no point, the whole time you're there, you're always within eye shot of a piece of litter. That's the problem. There you go, Kathy. I solved it for you.
Yeah.
Shout out to Pizza Rat.
And I'm friends with Buddy the Rat. If you've ever seen Buddy the Rat on TikTok or Instagram, I know him personally. Friend of mine.
This is an animal?
This is a man who dresses like a rat in New York City and is quite famous on social media.
Friend of yours?
Yeah.
All right.
Buddy the Rat.
Unpack that after the show.
Yeah.
All right. I've got got one for you real quick. How much does the American dream cost? Any guesses?
It is the second largest mall in America. Anybody know what the price tag is?
What the price tag on that mall is? Oh, God. $5 billion.
Not talking about the mall. Cheeky. The American life. The perfect American lifestyle.
It's cost of your happiness and joy.
So,
I mean, if we're factoring in college, are we talking about college education for 2 kids, a house, a car?
the whole dream.
$5 million?
That depends where you live, too.
All in.
What does all in mean? That's not a number.
No, I'm asking you. All in for a lifetime of American Dream.
Yeah, all in for the whole, lifetime cost.
$5 million.
You just copied Rahul. What the hell?
Is that
Ross?
what you said, Rahul?
Yeah, but I'm going to go Price is Right, $5.1 million.
Well played. Ross?
Well, not everywhere is expensive as where we live, so I'm going to go lower and say like $2 million.
Okay.
No
the fact
way.
that you guys are even like guessing in the millions, I think suggests that there's an issue with the American dream, that you should need millions of dollars to achieve what everyone in the country is trying to achieve. So, fascinating recent Visual Capitalist article from Dorothy Neufeld broke down each aspect of the American dream by their lifetime cost as of 2024. The top 3 most expensive parts of the American dream: retirement. Number 1, 1.6 million just for retirement, which was the recommended minimum savings for 20 years of retirement. Owning a home, that was the second most expensive. You're going to need about $930,000 to own a home. That's based on buying an existing single-family home with a 30-year mortgage, including 20%.
What are we already
down.
at, like 3 million now?
Basically, yep.
Yep.
And 2.5. And raising kids to the age of 18 and paying for 4 years at a public college would cost a total of $830,000. Then you're also going to need to own a car. That's $800,000 worth of payments, not including fuel or maintenance. A vacation once a year from ages 22 to 84. That's $180,000. A wedding. That's $44,000. Ceremony, reception, engagement ring. $37,000 to own a dog and a cat, and $8,000 for the funeral. So that would bring the total cost of the American dream to a simple $4.4 million. So you guys weren't too far off. You'll be pleased to know that that would exceed the average lifetime salaries of both men, $3.3 million, and women, $2.4 million, with bachelor's degrees.
So
it's not attainable for anyone.
It's not attainable in your entire life.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking to 2 people who, or at least 2 people, I don't know, Stephanie, who are paying for daycare, so it's not surprising to me.
Yeah. On the cost of...
The cost of the dogs sound kind of high.
On the cost of a home, given the surging cost of home prices, 3 out of every 4 US households, 3 in 4, are unable to afford a median-priced home in 2024. And on the cost of kids, 1/3 of Americans under the age of 50 who don't have kids cite affordability concerns as a major reason for not having them, in part because the average cost of college tuition has climbed 750% since 1963, after adjusting for inflation.
Woof.
I'm going back to England at the end of November. If anyone wants to join me, you're welcome to join.
I'll be there in April.
The British dream. No, I won't be there. I'll be gone.
Well,
anyway, that's what we've got time for today's episode. Have a good trip. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Stephanie, who will be in England in April.
I will be in England in April. Thank you, Marcus.
And of course, thank you to Rahul.
Thanks very much, Marcus.
Thank you to Ross.
Thanks, Marcus.
So depressed. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Stuart runs the team. Sophie does our social media. And to Lance as well, who helps out with the show on Fridays. Thank you to everyone for listening in. We hope to see you on Monday for the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast. Happiest of weekends.